Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully you can hear this. What do you call this? Let me see. What was I going to talk about today? I forgot what I was going to talk about, and that's totally fine. So you can probably see this is like a glimpse of my first chart. It looks very messy for those who aren't used to this kind of stuff. That's totally fine. But what I wanted to talk about today is because of I noticed something about my chart. As you can probably see from the title, that it's one of those beautiful things that happens when I like one of the things I've learned about when as I've been doing astrology. I've been doing this for like quite a while. Well, give or take 10 years, something like that. But it's on and off. But the beautiful thing I learned about it is that it works hand in hand with everything that we're doing now, growing, maturing, working with our shadows, working with the negative, towards elevation, all those things, awakening, all those things, and everything else, because it's all part of the process. You can call it whatever you want. These are tools. Everything we're learning here is everything is a tool. Everything is a tool in school, right? Tool. If you're familiar with Dolores Cannon's work, she talks about this being an earth school. So that's exactly what we're doing. So for me, my journey is towards this whole astrology thing. And I actually have two asteroids like conjunct my sun. It's funny, Imhotep and Urania, and that shows a lot. That is like, oh my gosh. So that's like a lot of like astrology stuff. Even astronomy too is part of that. Um, Something that will resonate with me, even though at the beginning I was just like, oh, it was like a lot of technical stuff. But the point I'm making for this one is the secrets of the stars and how that works with shadow. So you're probably wondering, how does that work? Well, it's astrology is showing your path, but astrology was you can say the precursor to psychology back then. It was a precursor to anything that works with shadows. Um, Although in the past, ancients knew about the shadow, they just didn't call it a shadow. They called it something else. It's the false part of the false self. It's part of they use it in mythology. Like one of the things we use now in modern astrology is some of the asteroids, like Lilith. Pluto is also tied to shadow. Lilith is tied to shadow. Lucifer is tied to shadow. Any of the dark asteroids, dark planets, dwarf planets, centaurs, whatever, it's all part of that whole process of shadow work. And they can be reused, basically repurposed. So how this ties into what I'm going to say today is several things. There's three main things. One, what I discovered for myself is the birth chart is actually your path. And I think that's kind of obvious, right? So number two, okay, birth chart is all the parts in the astrological chart, even specifically the birth chart, but also the other types of chart is part is there are symbols and there are also actual, I guess you can say, epithets, like kind of like characters, like things that represent. So I'm itchy right now. Um, of the fragmented self, the fragmented higher self, the fragmented universe. If you look at Teal Swan's stuff, she talks about fragmentation. I believe that for me, this made sense when I was looking at the stars. I was like observing it. I was like, oh, that's an aspect of myself. That's an aspect of myself. This, everywhere. Everything is a fragment. It's a part of the whole piece. So that's why when we read charts, we look at the whole chart. You have to look at the whole chart, meaning like what is connected where. It's when we work on it, it's very straightforward actually. The third one is that the birth chart is a perception. This is one of the things that came to me that was kind of like, first of all, I didn't understand that it was a perception. I just knew that it was like, I started realizing like, hey, wait a second. So if you have, let's say, what happens if you have twins, right? How do they act differently? I mean, like we have this thing called dwads in astrology. I think that's from Vedic astrology, but I use it sometimes and it actually works. It's getting very specific to the degrees. If you look at, like, let's say my chart, you go specific to the degrees. For example, my sun is 26 degrees, right? 26 degrees in Libra. I'm not exactly Libra. Um, that one is towards, what is that one? Uranus? I have your cheat sheet. So Libra, it's about 26 degrees. That's Leo. That's a Leo energy. So that makes sense. I have a lot of hubris. And hubris is the asteroid that's actually close to this one. So the Dwads give it more specificity. But what that means is that if you have twins, one is going to be born with, different a minute or so, or maybe 5 minutes later, and that makes a huge difference in the degrees. That gives them a different characteristic. One twin could be born Leo, the other could be born on Virgo, but they have the same sun sign, and that affects it. The degrees make a huge difference. So what that means in terms of it being perception is, if you look at twins, if you look at one area of their life, let's say the fourth house, which is family, general family stuff, and home and all that stuff, their perception of it is going to be different. You're going to see slightly different from each other. Like you're going to be like, "What's this?" It's a little bit more, kind of more, what do you call this? Challenging, but nice challenging. It's a good type of challenge. Um, if it's between twins, but if it's, let's say, you and your siblings, naturally you're going to be so different. But even then, when you look at it that way, you look at you and your siblings' charts, their perception of house or home or safety or being completely yourself, that's the fourth house, you're going to see it differently. So it's perception, right? So basically, yeah. And because it's perception, that ties into exactly what we're all doing. This is a game we're in, it's a simulation. We're supposed to be here to learn, right? So the creation is created through the ongoing creation of life itself. The universe is expanding. So everything we're doing here is also expanding. Everything is changing. Change is inevitable. It's part of evolution. Adaptation and evolution, scientifically speaking. Apparently that's what they say. First it's adaptation, and then over time it's evolution. Either way, it's change. Okay. Um, and then the fourth one, whatever I see in the birth chart can be used to bring me towards consciousness, awareness of not only that, but also repurpose. One example I'm going to give is, like, I have Uranus here, right? So for those who don't know what that symbol is, it's this one right here. This one right here. So Uranus is planet of change, planet of sudden changes, actually, being unusual, being weird, electricity, the nervous system. It rules that, revolutions, um, things that break down, lightning, electricity, of course, technology, advancements, progress, productivity, um, uh, earthquakes as well, because it's meant to shake things up, right? It's the earth shaker. If you remember, Sailor Moon, that, that's the Sailor Uranus, exactly what it is. He was like saying, it's shaking. And that was her thing. It's shaking. Sounds like he's saying ass, but I'm like, no, it's earth. But anyways, the point is that that's what Uranus is. So for me, I have this, I have always felt like nervous when I was a kid. I have this nervous energy of, like, especially as I got older. Um, and I still have it where I get nervous around people, and that makes sense, right? The moon is people, and then Uranus is square Uranus. It's actually square Mars, square Uranus, square Mercury. But it's that nervousness about it. Mercury also rules down here. Mercury also rules, um, the nervous system. Mars rules the body, or at least the head, and then the bottom part, the reproductive system. So It's stronger with Uranus for me because it's a very energetic planet. But it's the same with Mars too. But either way, I feel all of it. So this moon thing, which is like magnetism around me, senses, all that stuff, that's the moon vibration. When I get nervous, I have those feelings. But what is this teaching me? What has this taught me personally? That if I make use of that same energy and I embrace it, and embrace the shadow of it instead of resisting, because I used to resist it a lot. It's like, I don't want to be nervous. I don't want to be around people who are unpredictable. I want consistency, all that stuff, because I resisted it. I'm still partially resisting it, but what I do is like I lean into the nervousness. This is why I love doing the cold showers, the Wim Hof method, the ice baths, the breathing itself that prepares me for the ice bath or the cold showers. Eh, It grounds me, not only grounds me, but it gets me used to it because the shock of the cold is that's Uranus. That's a Uranus thing. Just like you just breathe through it. You learn to breathe through it and you learn to surrender and you surrender and you surrender and you surrender. Right. So there you go. So that's why like it's become a lot more manageable. And if I didn't do this one, I would be really dizzy all the time. I have Meniere's and I have that condition of like it's a, if you look it up, Meniere's is an unpredictable type of condition. It's or whatever it is. It's an imbalance in the inner ear. So what that's teaching me is personally for me is it is opposite my Mercury Uranus opposite Chiron. Chiron is in Taurus here. It's retrograde shows that it's a repeating thing because it's ongoing. But that's not. Anyways, let's not go into that. But Taurus rules this area of the head right here. The head itself area, the ears, possibly the eyes a little bit, nose, more like the senses. It's anything to do with sensations, like feeling things, tasting things. This is ruled by smells, the smell, taste, hearing, even eyes, like what looks good. That's Taurus. Not necessarily perception, that's Mercury. So Taurus rules that. But there's Chiron is wounding, right? So with that being the case, if I don't balance, whenever I didn't balance myself and I got too excited, I got too intense, I didn't know how to pause and breathe. That same feeling would come up. And I can feel it in my shoulders when I get tense. It goes up. I can feel it. It's that's a beautiful thing when you practice presence, when you practice awareness. It comes through when in terms of it comes through the what you do. It comes through like it shows in because it's practice. It shows up eventually, and there's no A or B sort of thing. It's not a linear thing. It's just that you keep working on it, and eventually you evolve. So that's my thing. I wanted to share that because it's like you can work with the energies that you have in your chart, even if it's not your chart. The fact that you are aware of it, bring your awareness to where that is in the body. The chart will always show that, but the chart is only showing. Astrology is only really showing what's already there. Now, for those who don't know, and if you want to get into it, and you're like, "Oh, that's what it is," but don't be stuck on the labels. Don't get stuck on the labels. It's not helpful. Yeah. So go with the presence. Go into the body, bring your attention there and see what it really feels like, the sensations, even the emotions that come up. Feel it in the body. And that's a good start. I personally recommend doing cold showers because it trains the body physically, especially with trauma. Trauma is a shock. We all have trauma. When we're born, that's traumatic. But what happens is that it's a form of change, right? As mentioned in a previous video, it's change. So trauma, even though it is change, it's something that, especially for us mammalians or apes, we don't like that. But we have to evolve through that and understand it's like, ah. The other thing I noticed is that um, when we fast, I'm not saying that I'm not recommending this directly, but I personally, when I eat once a day, when we fast, at least for me, when I fast, it helps a lot more. or when I at least when I don't eat too much. It's just I use up the reserves in the body. But that's just a kind of a side thing. I'm still kind of figuring that out myself. But what I have discovered is the whole like when we come into presence, the cold shower really helps because the cold shower not only trains your body, it does a bunch of other things like pH levels go up, you have oxygen in the brain, you feel more connected to, and then there's DMT, access to DMT. So it's like mushrooms, except this one is very natural. As a Wim Hof says, he says, high in your own supply. That's what he says. So at least that's how it is for me. So, anyways, um, you work with the energy, you lean into it, you surrender. And if you think you haven't surrendered enough, you surrender some more. It's Gabriel Bernstein. Either way, it makes sense. Right? If you try it yourself, you know that it makes sense. So, anyways, I'm not here to really give advice. I'm really sharing what happens to me, what I discovered. 4 things. So you can backtrack to the video and see what it's like. I'll put in captions with this one. I'm not sure if I'm putting timestamps. If I don't, I apologize ahead of time, but that's just the nature of things. If I forget, I forget. Um, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys later. Uh, Thank you for watching. And yeah, that's it. Have a good one.